and welcome back to Tea Time and a Story. So, today I want to start a new series that I'm calling Best Friends Book Club, and I'm aware that is a very dumb name, but it's a book club my best friends and I started. So, I don't know what else to call it. What we have it called in the group chat is currently a trademark name by a certain D&D minifigure company, so don't really want to call it that. So Best Friends Book Club. And the first book that we decided to read was Kings or Pawns by J.J. Sherwood. Now, Kings or Pawns is a self-published book by a local Cincinnati author. I say local because I live in Cincinnati, but by a local Cincinnati author. It is a fantasy fiction series. It's kind of along the lines of Game of Thrones and Tolkien, with a little bit of like Dragon Age and Witcher mixed in, which I know that doesn't sound like it makes sense, but if you take the world building that Tolkien has and mix it with the character arcs and dialogue from the other three franchises I mentioned, you kind of get this series here. So Kings or Pawns, like I said, is self-published. I've actually had the honor to meet J.J. Sherwood on about 2 occasions now. And the friend that had us read this for our book club is actually friends with her. They like hang out sometimes, which is pretty neat. That I can say I'm friends with someone who's friends with her, which now that I realize that sounds really lame. Right, let's get into what the book is about. So, Kings or Pawns is the first book in a series that is called Steps of Power. There's currently 2 books out right now. There's 2 more on the way. I don't know. There's no official like publication date for them. On the website it just says they're coming soon. But anyway, Kings or Pawns. I'm just going to read the description on the back and then I'll elaborate some based on my own personal readings. Kings or Pawns. The year is 8994 PE. The elven city of Elvorium has become corrupted to the core by politics, which is a mood in the year 2020. I almost said 2019. My gosh, 2020 does not sound like a real year. With his father dead and the royal schism at his back, Prince Hiram ascends the throne as king of the elven world of Sevrigal. I also apologize if I pronounce some of these fantasy names wrong. Young and bold, Hiram is determined to undo the council's power, but the brutal murders by an assassin loosed within the city threaten to undermine the king's ambitions. As corruption and death threaten to tear Elvorium apart from within, the warlord Sibelius threatens the city from within, laying siege to Sevrigal's eastern capital. With the elven world crumbling around him, Hiram finds himself in a dangerous political balance between peace and all-out war. So, kind of based on that description, you can definitely see where this book is meant to lead up to something a bit more epic, with the last line being about all-out war. But, so this book has several narrators that tell the story. Probably the 2 most important being Hiram, the prince / king mentioned in the description, and the general of his army that is fighting against Cheesecake. No, his general Jikun, who is the fighting against the warlord mentioned in the 2nd paragraph. Between the 2, I don't want to say young boys, men, because they're elves, and they're over 100 years old each, so I don't really think that's considered young. So between the 2 of them, you get different sides of what is going on. From Hiram's perspective, you watch as he is trying to glue this country back together from a political schism that happened 300 years prior, I think, to his birth, or 300 years before. And this civil war that is going on that is raged by Sibelius, and it just in Jikun being the general, you get to see firsthand what this civil war is doing to the country. Because at the prologue, you find out that Sibelius has summoned this demon necromancy kind of monster, and things are about to get real. And Jikun comes, hi Cheesecake, and Ji-kun comes back to the capital and is like, hey, we got to do something. Things are about to get bad. But Hiram is busy battling the council, who will not listen to him. They're only interested in their own gains. Not to mention he's trying to dodge this assassin that murdered his father like a month prior. But from Ji-kun's perspective, you also see kind of how the war affects civilization outside of the city. You go to his hometown, which is like the elven equivalent of Alaska or like Minnesota. And although it does not say, it is heavily implied that the like evil magics that Sibelius is using have like awakened something deep in the earth, and it's causing like local wildlife to like really hurt the locals. And so he's also like, all right, we got a demon on our hands, we got an evil warlord, and now there's some kind of bad magic rising up and it's hurting people. So he and Hiram have to work together to try and glue things back together. I said before, it's told from the perspective of multiple characters, both on the like good side and the bad side. One of the characters I really wanted to highlight in this book is the character Alvina. She is handmaiden. I don't know if handmaiden is the correct word, but servant feels too lackluster. But she essentially tends to Hiram. She helps him get ready for events. She does his laundry. So I'm just going to continue saying handmaiden, even though I don't think that's the right term. So she's Hiram's handmaiden. And what makes her really special is that she is a mute. And the best part about that is when you read the chapters that are told from her perspective, you can really tell that Sherwood didn't throw her in there just for the diversity card. Her muteness is not the butt of any tasteless jokes. Anytime she's treated with disrespect, it's because of her social status, not because she's mute, which is really nice, and it's kind of refreshing because you see that a lot in not just fantasy fiction, but just about every kind of fiction. Is when someone has a disability like this, it becomes the punchline for a lot of really crappy jokes. Nice to see an author that decides to not take that approach. Not to mention Alvina herself is just a really sweet and wonderful character. My favorite part about this series in general is the characters. It is a high fantasy series, so the setting and the world building is crazy. Like I said, it's on the level of Tolkien. On the website for the Steps of Power series, which I'm going to put in this description below, Sherwood says that she's been building this like fictional world of hers for over 20 years, which is pretty crazy because that means I'm just about as old as it, because I'm 23 years old. So to think that she's been building this probably as long as I've been alive, it's kind of crazy to think about, but it really shows, because the love and the dedication put into the world and the characters themselves is absolutely fantastic. So another thing I really love about the series is the dialogue and the relationships that develop among characters. One of the, I'm going to go ahead and say he probably is the protagonist. I'm going to say the protagonist, Ji-kun. The relationship between him and his general Navan. At the beginning of the book, you know that they have a good relationship. But by the time you get to the end of the book, they're pretty ride or die for each other. And I really like watching that develop. Not to mention a lot of the best banter in the series comes from these two. I want to read you an example. So for context, Ji-kun is in the elven city of Elvorium. He just got back from like a pretty gruesome battle. And he decided that to take the edge off for the evening, he was going to spend time with a lady of the night, which is highly illegal. So in the morning, he is woken by his captain, Navan, and we get this fantastic banter. We start with Navan. "Wait, where do you think you're going? You need to eat," Navon abruptly reprimanded him in his usual grating manner, pointing sternly toward the dining hall. "I already ate." Navon paused a moment and then pursed his lips into a tight line. That was crude. And that's at the kind of towards the beginning here. But you get all sorts of fantastic quips like that between the two of them, all the way up through the second book, which I'm only going to talk about the first book for time's sake right here. But that's only like a small taste of what you find in the pages of this. Probably my favorite line that I've read so far in this series, and I just really, really wanted to share it with you guys. So another fantastic thing about this book was, although it does start a bit slow, because like a lot of high fantasy, there's a lot of lore and exposition that you have to get through before you get to the juicy bits. But once you get going, it's like that one roller coaster at Disney that goes from like 0 to 100 miles per hour in like a second flat. I don't know. I've never been to Disney, but I watched the documentaries as a child. It's kind of like that, because there are a lot of plot twists that I was not expecting. One of them I kind of saw coming. It was very foreshadowed. Or maybe I've just read too many books and I just see it coming at this point. But there are also twists that I never saw coming, and it was the equivalent of being slapped in the face with a brick wall that was hurled at you by a tornado. And in my opinion, that's part of what makes a really, really great story, is when the author is able to throw those twists at you, and when you look back, you can see the hints, but when they happen the first time, you're like, that came out of nowhere. I think that's great storytelling, and that's one of the reasons that I think this is a fantastic novel. A lot of times when books are self-published, they tend to be very not that great. It's a real gamble when you buy them, because you can end up buying some real like My Immortal Harry Styles like Wattpad fan fiction, or you can find absolute gems like these. I do believe I heard that she is trying to get published by some larger houses, or some like publishing houses, but as of right now, you can buy her books on Amazon as well as off of her website, which, like I said, I'm going to link in the description below. On her website, there is like official art she has commissioned for characters and settings. So if you're reading along and you want some like visual aids, those are right there, and that's really, really great. Another problem with self-publishing is it is kind of hard to get a hold of the work if you're not exclusively looking for it. I don't think that was grammatically correct. If you're not looking for it. I work in a library, and like I said, I live in Cincinnati, and so does Sherwood. Yet we didn't have our books in our collection, but we do have a lot of local authors. So part of why I made this video was not only because I kind of wanted to take you guys along with the ride of the book club my friends and I are doing, but because I did like a quick like YouTube search, and I noticed nobody else on YouTube had talked about this series at all, which I found really surprising. But at the same time, it doesn't have a lot of publicity, but I guess I just wanted to get it out there because this is a book that is on the level of a lot of really, really well received high fantasy, like I said, Game of Thrones, the Witcher novels, but it doesn't get the publicity that they do just simply because it's self-published. So as far as our best friends book club goes, I believe for the next book we're reading, my friend whose turn it was picked a Dresden Files book. I don't know which one. I think he's still working on what he wants to do with it, but I will probably do a video on that in the future. If you know of any self-published or kind of like indie published books that are really, really, really good but don't get any publicity, put them in the comments below. I'd love to see about them, and I'm sure other people would too. Because that's the great thing about the internet, is that if something we like isn't out there enough, we can advertise for it ourselves, or we can scream from the top of the roofs about how great it is. So yeah, that was Kings or Pawns, this was my first book review, so I'm sorry if this video is terrible. I will get better over time, so see you next time. Bye.